All right. I believe we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Truth Warrior. It's been a little bit. These have been rather intermittent as of late. My apologies. I've got lots of demands on me these days, but I try to get them in when I can. And I'm going to be continuing on in some of my latest investigations that I've been covering here on Truth Warrior and going deeper into the rabbit hole of the secret cults of world power. And I did a series on my Substack. You can check me out. Just follow Truth Warrior on Substack, called Cults of Death and Power, which was a reprise of a series I did back in 2018. I kind of redid the series and bringing attention to how cults work, the cults that are at work in the world. There's sort of the public square cults, and then there's the occult, the hidden cult aspect of things. The whole history of secret societies, we've done that. We've done the occult history of communism and totalitarianism. Did a whole thing on the idea of totalism, which is just the sort of understanding of how totalitarian ideology works, and all that. We've done a lot of history on that on this show. One that is going to be very relevant to what we're going to talk about today is something I did on the dark side of Tibetan Buddhism, which you can get on my Substack. I did a whole presentation on that. And I've got a few things from that presentation that are going to be very relevant to what I want to cover with you today. And so, yeah, I've done a few drive episodes, just sort of sharing my ideas about some of the debates going on right now, a few things here and there on current events. Of course, we're sitting in Canada right now, a couple days away from the election that's coming up on Monday. Today is Friday, April 25th, 2025. And we've got quite the situation going on here in Canada. And so I figured, okay, well, we can kind of talk about all the things that everybody else is talking about, or we could get into what I think is more appropriate, something I'm more interested in, which is past the veil of just the events and the people and the political level, getting into the hidden secret level, the higher level. And when we're looking at that level, I always have to have the disclaimer here because, of course, there's always new people tuning in. And if you're that person, welcome to this show. You got quite the archive to go through to kind of understand more context of where I'm coming from in my research. But I'll give you a little bit today, if you're new to this, that when we talk about the world of cults, the occult, secret societies, the power dynamics going on in the world of geopolitics and international banking and, world affairs, really, you're going to get branded conspiracy theorist automatically. And so I've got a few things I want to share with you, a couple clips and some ideas to share on that. But um, the reason I was thinking about this was because of a lot of the discussions going on about what's happening in the West right now. So it's Canada, America, Europe, Australia, what's going on at the heart of Western civilization, where it appears like we are in a decline big time on many different fronts. And it seems like there's a systematic movement to try to complete that operation and take out the pillars of the West, infiltrate and penetrate the cabinets, as Klaus Schwab, who's apparently stepping down from the head of the World Economic Forum. And I think he's being replaced by that water guy who's like, water is not a human right. So they just find one guy, take him out, put a new guy in. But either way, you're trying to think about like what's behind all that stuff. And people started getting into that level of world politics and these sort of agendas going on to do this great reset in the world. And a lot of academic thinkers in the conservative movement, even in the liberal movement, right, have been commenting on this, right? And more as we've gone. We all went through the pandemic era, and we're all realizing, oh my God, there were so many lies we were told and so much manipulation going on. There was clearly political designs being used through that pandemic era. We see this behind many of these huge debates raging on social media and in our friend circles. There's always this political slant. And anybody that's paid any attention and started even the basic levels of pattern recognition in their minds when they're looking at this stuff will notice that, yeah, there seems to be, even if there are real issues that get put up in front of us, there's like this, the media and the way all the think tanks and just the whole narrative is going, is it's bending everybody's mind towards this idea of central power, right? World Economic Forum, UN, Club of Rome, World Bank, this whole thing that's been going on. And I've done endless shows kind of breaking a lot of that down, but I like doing more on it to fill in some of the details and to keep revisiting it as we march through this era. And as many of you out there, like myself, are asking a lot of questions about what's really going on behind the scenes, what's going on right now with America, what's going on with this Mark Carney that's coming in. I did a show recently getting into his background. What a story. What a story. And to really understand this, you got to go above the public square level. I've been saying this for a long time on this show. Can't just sit in the public square, which is what's been presented to you from cradle to grave by all the major influences in your life. And there's a lot of missing pieces. And that's what people that are waking up, quote unquote, are starting to realize. We got missing pieces about history. Doesn't mean we throw the whole thing out. There's another extreme that's trying to completely rewrite history and, again, guide people towards specific conclusions. So you got to be really careful, right? We're kind of on a razor's edge here where, in my show, I'm not here saying everything's a conspiracy and everybody's evil and, just jumping to conclusions on everything. But I'm also not on the camp of, oh, just trust the experts blindly. The government knows what's best. The media would never lie to you. There is no such thing as any conspiracy ever at the highest level. We're totally fine to accept it on the average Joe level, but never when we get to the world of international politics or anything like that. So there's extremes, okay? And I've done my very best to learn from who I think are the best thinkers on these subjects. You can't agree with every single aspect that a lot of these guys I'm going to bring up to you are going to bring forward, because many of them are pioneering it or they have their own biases. But nonetheless, they do bring out irrefutable facts that can help us average people that are sort of watching from the sidelines and trying to gather this information and figure it all out. We can learn a lot from these many thinkers and writers who've been doing this, who've actually documented whistleblowers, very specific research, right? And so what I'm just trying to do here is just keep bringing it back to some sort of balance when we're looking at this stuff. Bring in the facts, make sure that it's stuff that you can go and validate for yourself, and to not jump on every single bandwagon that's popular in the alternative research community, or just go along with the mainstream normie narrative all the time either. But how do we find that middle ground where we're getting hopefully closer to the actual truth of what's going on? And the only way to really get into this, if you're curious about it, is to develop your own pattern recognition, work on looking into these subjects for yourself, try to understand, who are the real experts here? Who are the ones pretending to be the experts? How can we tease out the gems? Like, how do you do that? I mean, not everybody is maybe even having the time to be able to do this, right? So that's why shows like mine exist. That's my goal anyways. And I hope that I can offer you some insight and some things to think about when it comes to what's going on. And if you get to the high level, if you zoom out and get that 40,000 foot view, it gives you more clarity on some of these individual events that seem isolated. They seem like they're just sort of happening on their own. And when you get this bigger picture and you know where things are headed because of what is admitted and stated publicly by a lot of these think tanks, organizations, and high profile individuals who've been talking about this stuff for a long time. And we're going to get into just how long they've been talking about it, right up to the present day. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we're going to do our best. That's all we can do. So just want to put the disclaimer out there that nothing I'm saying here is some sort of final declarative statement on the matter. You're all free to investigate for yourselves. You can trust whoever you want. You can agree, disagree. It doesn't really matter. But when you're in the process of thinking things through, you have to look at a lot of this information. You got to try to get your hands on as much of this as you can and learn to develop that intuition, your logic and your reason, follow where the evidence leads, and then keep an open mind as you continue to develop your own theories on what's happening. And then, of course, the proof is always going to be in the pudding, isn't it? We're all experiencing these things right now, live in real time. And that's why I think this is a good time to revisit a lot of the research that is already put in place that I think many people aren't even aware exists. So my job is to show you the people that have already thought the great thoughts and written it all down and documented it, maybe synthesize it a little bit here and there and add my own flavor. And I hope it benefits you in that regard. So welcome, everybody. We are currently live on X, on Twitch, and on Rumble. Big shout out to everybody who's tuning in. I know this is sort of last minute, so most of you are probably catching the archive. So welcome. And for anybody that's new to this, you're also more than welcome. And I hope you enjoy it and at least get something out of this. So what is this? Well, I have a question for, it's sort of a continuation. I did this Drive with Dave episode recently where I was breaking down some master-slave dynamics, getting into superiority, inferiority types when it comes to psychology, trying to get into the roots of the psychological level of these things. It was sort of a carryover from a recent episode we did on Unslaved. And of course, I must mention this. Unslaved.com is one of the great archives for you as well. It's a paid service, but it is absolutely worth it. We've got thousands of hours of detailed research, presentations, interviews over there. We've been documenting this, myself and Michael Tsarian. We've been documenting this since 2016. His work goes back to like the early 1980s, and he's been looking at the occult agenda for, oh my God, longer than I've been alive. So we've got lots of great sources over there for you to continue going even deeper into the subjects that I'm giving you here today. But make sure to go and check that out. And just to let you know, we are on Substack now. You can follow Unslaved on Substack. It's just a really good platform. The video player's got all the bells and whistles over there. And so you can get it on enslaved.com, or we're building the archive also on Substack. So take your pick. And then, of course, don't forget to check out Truth Warrior on Substack as well. That's my own private research. And I've got a great library there as well of great subjects for you to follow. There's lots of free stuff on there as well. And Substack is really starting to hop these days. So definitely go and check it out. So with that out of the way, the book that I was looking at for this one is a book called The Occult and Subversive Movements, Tradition and Counter-Tradition in the Struggle for World Power. It's by Dr. Kerry Bolton. I've talked about his work before. He's one of those types of guys that is also clipping from some of the more experts, like professors, lawyers, constitutional scholars, historians, right? Like these are the guys that are in that field, and they write their books and their articles, and they just put it all in there for you. They find the quotes and the snippets from the UN and all the websites, and they do all that legwork for you. You can go and validate it, of course, which you should. Never just take anybody's word on face value. But I like a lot of where his book went in this regard. There might be a few things here and there I'm going to disagree with, but that's natural. You're never going to wholly agree with just anybody. But I wanted to get into this because I was thinking about this. I was kind of thinking back to this Drive with Dave episode I did. The other subject I brought up in that video, which is my most recent one, you can get it on Spotify, iTunes, X, whatever, Rumble, is that I was talking also about the debate that happened between Dave Smith and Douglas Murray on Joe Rogan. I didn't get into the weeds of all the subjects. I was just interested in talking about this whole debate about experts. Should we trust the experts? Should every Joe sitting at home just reading stuff on Wikipedia, should he be the one that's now the new authority educating the youth? Should there be any level of censorship or not? Should it just be a free ride? And I know there's lots of opinions on this, but I was just trying to give a balanced view on it and, showing, okay, yeah, I've been for the longest time, especially when it came to when we were covering what was going on with the pandemic, trying to get the understanding out there that what we call the experts aren't actually the experts anymore. They're highly funded. There's political stuff going on. There's scientific fraud going on. There's all kinds of chicanery happening in the background. And so therefore, trusting the experts has become quite difficult, right? And then you got these academic-minded people who don't really understand fully that this is the case. Many of them do, but many of them still don't. And so they look at any affront by some average Joe questioning the establishment in any way, the expert class, how dare we, right? Questioning them as being some sort of Dunning-Kruger thing, or purely just, the little guy trying to take down the big guy, and, sit down, know your role, like what's, all this kind of stuff. And so I was trying to give a balanced take on that. And just really quickly, my thoughts are we should always be challenging the experts and the quote unquote authorities because of the problem of corruption, right? Because of the problem of corruption. That is the reason why. It's not because we should, as a society or a civilization or a culture, reject the idea that there are people that have developed expertise and experience in their fields, right? Um, and we shouldn't just trust every Joe Blow out there that has a new theory, right? Just because of that. But we should trust things on merit. See, if you just go back to the basics of having merit be the key, where is your merit? What research did you do? What authority do you have? What expertise have you developed? I don't care if you have a degree on your wall. This is me. I don't care if you come from just the academic institutions, because of the fact that the academic institutions have been mostly captured by ideological extremists. And the fact that we do have this corruption problem. So you can't ignore this. And so in that regard, the conspiracy theorists were right. We couldn't trust a lot of the medical journals. We found out there's loads of conflicts of interest there. We can't trust what the mainstream media is saying, even though they'll present on certain events that actually do happen, like wars or whatever. But then they spin it towards a particular opinion that you then see reflected and repeated back to you by everybody who just watches it, repeats it, and pretends like they know what they're talking about when they really don't. We see that problem. But then on the other side, we also see there is a legitimate Dunning-Kruger effect happening, where there's a lot of people that are trying desperately to be bigger than they actually are. And they just want to take any pot shot possible at actual researchers, scientists, detectives, investigators, experts, right? And so they're just, not able to understand the difference between those two things. And now everybody that's just sort of watching this happen from the outside is all tearing each other to bits over these things. And then for me, I sit back and I go, oh my goodness, this isn't very positive, because the real sharks in the room, the real high profile psychopaths that have made their way to the top of the power pyramids, they're just having a great laugh as we all flounder about like a bunch of morons fighting over stuff that doesn't matter. And that's been a problem for a long time, which is why I've never rested my hope in some sort of collective action that's going to just dethrone the powers that be. Because there's also a very communistic agenda to do exactly that, and not for the reasons that maybe somebody that's just sick of all the political corruption might be thinking about how we have to fix these problems of corruption in our governments, in our institutions, right? So it gets really sticky, and it's hard for the average person, even myself, who's been doing this research for a long time. It's hard to sometimes get the accuracy that you're hoping for and really understand it. And so it's all these sort of issues that were inspiring me to do today's show, and to continue to do this work. So, uh, I want to start off with just hopefully a message to these academic types. I'm not going to name any names, okay? But the people that come from the institutions that sport their degrees every time they're on every podcast, like, here, let's give half an hour introductions to these guys because of all the things they've done and all the awards they've won and all the things. And I don't want to take those things away from those people. Those are incredible achievements. But when we overemphasize, I feel like it's like that overemphasizing that you get, even I see it in the martial art world, where you got these guys that got like 10-degree black belts on with all these red panels all over the place. And it's just like, yeah, but you're kind of out of shape, and I don't believe you're really capable of what you're pretending you are. And so there's a lot of charlatans, a lot of people that they go overboard in projecting how amazing they are and how many black belts they have and how many degrees they have. And it turns out they're mostly full of shit, right? And so to me, I look at that as a sort of extension of this little man syndrome, where there's this performative element of these people that are pretending to be your experts, but really they're not. And so I'm cautioning the academic world for putting so much bloody stock in expertise and what degrees, who are you to even speak up to these issues unless you have these degrees, right? And the other thing I want to mention to these academic types is, why the hell haven't you gotten into any of the occult shit yet? When is that going to happen? Like, how much longer do we have to wait for this? What more do you need to see before you realize, A, human collective tribalism on a psychological level exists? That's an extension of that is all these freaky cults that we've seen both in ancient times and in modern times that I've documented thoroughly. So cult activity and the attraction towards cult-like thinking, which is basically just putting your mind in a box, worshiping the guru, shaving your head, rolling the beads, wearing the costume, repeating the mantras. I thought the West was supposed to be about individualism and free thought and questioning and challenging authority, but as long as you've got that expertise and the evidence to actually do it. But in the academics that I'm seeing, who I have a great respect for when it comes to the subjects they talk about and call out, they're out there calling out the woke bullshit. They're out there calling out the socialist, communist, fascist, totalist agenda. Great. They're spotting all the nonsense going on with the way all this messaging is going towards our kids. Fantastic. They're pointing out the flaws in the media and they're calling them out. Awesome. They're even all the doctors and people that were calling out all the bullshit coming from the World Health Organization and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Big Pharma and all that kind of stuff. Amazing. But then these guys go on this really big power trip and they'll sit there and on the same breath that they're critiquing government, institutions, media, propaganda, etc., that I just listed, they're on the same breath, they're out there condemning conspiracy theorists. And then you start going, okay, can we get past just like political stuff for 5 minutes? Because that's just kindergarten. Can we get to the world of what's known as the occult? Can we get into the world of these secret societies and whatnot? Because they actually did exist. They do exist. They still exist. And that's a factor that's missing from these guys' analysis and these big names that have millions of followers. And that, again, do great work on the surface. But to me, it's still amateur hour because they refuse to even, they're slowly getting there. Slowly. You even see some of these Joe Rogan podcasts, a little bit, although it's been a little iffy lately. You see some of these big guys getting into a little more. But it just shocks me that even after all the shit we just went through from 2020 till now, over the last 5 years, where everybody before 2020 was way more reluctant to even touch any notion of criminal conspiracies going on at the international level to achieve world power and dominion, which is one of the most age-old desires in mankind, especially at the elite psychopathic level. We slowly crept towards that, but we haven't seen enough for these big academic guys to start even uttering the word conspiracy or getting into these subjects I'm going to get to. We've got certain guys that are, and again, I'm not here to name names, but there are some that are, and God love them for doing it. There always has been, by the way. Okay. The people I look to do come from very prestigious backgrounds. They're not just Joe Schmoes sitting in their basement theorizing about things. They are the people that went and did the journalistic detective research and developed expertise in their fields and knew how to declassify formerly classified information and then deliver it in an elegant way to the general public. Those are the people that I like to read from. Oh, and hello, Rachel, Gypsy Soul. Hi, Dave from Kenora, Ontario. Hello. We got a whole bunch of people tuning in. Welcome, everybody. So it kills me because I'm like, you're doing so good. You're doing so good, but you drop the ball every time. And I know why. There's really only two reasons. One is that the big one is that in academia, you've worked your ass off to gain your level of status where everybody's going to listen to you. Now you're a bestseller and you're getting toured all over the place. You're getting all the big shows. Everybody loves you. You've got just an absolutely beautiful intellect. Your wordsmithing is incredible. Your research is great. You've got facts at your disposal. You can just blast the average Joe to oblivion. You've earned that. Good, good. But you're not going to go into the world of the occult and start talking about the occult stuff because you're worried about the blowback. You're worried about the blowback, not from the public. The public's actually far ahead of this. It's the intellectuals that are stuck in the mud here. It's your fellow intellectuals that you're worried about getting heat from. It's the critics of your books that you have to read every day. And you're already under enough attack, so I get it. But to me, the real mavericks, the real thinkers are not afraid to talk about these subjects, especially, again, when it's documented. Now, many of the critiques you're going to get from these guys when it comes to analyzing conspiracy research, okay? Because I don't want to get into this term conspiracy theory because that's a loaded term now. It's been totally weaponized and it's beaten to death, and everybody has different ways of talking, like meaning when they say it. Conspiracy research, conspiracy meaning two or more people gathered together to work towards an illegal, unlawful, or immoral act. I think history could be full of such cases. And I get the trepidation for entertaining this and spreading things like this. This is their concern, because the other downside of conspiracy theories is that there's a lot of spurious and unfounded nonsense. Vast majority of it is just howling at the moon kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And you don't want to install an overly pessimistic mindset in people, which happens with a lot of the conspiracy. I got lots of critiques for the conspiracy people too. Trust me. Okay. It's not just one way. I could probably have more critiques of the conspiracy guys than I do the academics these days, because it's just getting whack. Okay. But you got to look at it all, and you got to understand, I feel like that's the sane, rational way to do it, is go, all right, let's critique these guys. Let's critique these guys and see where we can spot the flaws and try to fix it moving forward for the younger generation coming up. Right. And so the concern about getting into this conspiracy world for any of these academic types is that they're afraid of the blowback. And like I said, they're afraid of, it seems like they're not as afraid of losing their positions in universities, because they're willing to stand on their hill with certain issues that end up getting them in front of courts and get them barred and have them demoted, and they have to move the country. So they're not afraid of that. So I'm like, okay, that's a good trait. So then what's the trepidation with talking about the next level of the very thing that you're already catching on to? And that there is political intrigue. There are political designs. There's a lot of bullshit going on, a lot of power dynamics behind the scenes. A lot of these guys will admit it, but they just won't take it to the next level and go like, well, how about you help the average Joe out there take the valid conspiracy research that I'm going to show you just another sampling of. And I've done this for a long time. Go check out the work. And Michael Tsarian as well, my colleague on Unslaved, we've done this at an academic, scientific level with facts galore to prove and validate these ideas. And why not help bring it out of the gray goo? Everybody's just not sure. And then they go down the wrong path with these conspiracy theories, because there's so many red herrings out there that are, I think that's part of the conspiracy, right? Is to lead people off from the real ones, and get them to be adopting fake ones, right? So why not help with this? Don't run away from the subjects of the occult. Go into it and expose it, and then use your intellects, use your scientific knowledge to take it out of the mystical realm of all the nonsense that's out there. Why not help that effort instead of trying to just, no, I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm just going to, in one hand, support it, like support the research by showing, yeah, we got this globalist agenda, we got Klaus Schwab, we got this, these communists infiltrating our government, and all this stuff. You're cool with that, but you're not going to go to the next level above that because you're worried for something. I don't know what it is. So I just wanted to say that, and to illustrate this, I'm going to open up with a clip, so I can find it here, of a show I did with Michael Tsarian, probably 2019, 2020, can't remember, somewhere around there. We called it The Psychology of Conspiracy Deniers. This was from part 2. And I really liked part 2 because what Michael and I did was, at the time, I had attended a live webinar by a local Canadian university professor. And this professor was doing an entire debunk for his students. I think he wrote a paper on it and all this stuff. He's doing this big debunk on conspiracy research, complete, like just in a total general sense. And so then we took his arguments, which are basically the arguments you're going to get from your average buddy. You're going to get it from the mainstream media. You're going to get it from everybody, right? And many of these academics, they basically just roll out the same arguments. And then Michael just spent 2 hours absolutely like decimating those arguments. Like it was a total destruction. I've never watched a more beautiful destruction of lies than in that show. And so here he is commenting on this, and it's at the point where I had been reading some of the slides from this presentation of this Professor Black, where he was talking about, oh, there's this like Illuminati conspiracy theory, and this is the psychological reason why people want to believe in this stuff, blah, blah, blah. So they always give you this. Like if you go to New Scientist or you go to Psychology Today, you can find hundreds of articles of psychological analysis of the conspiracy theorists. Ooh, they're all psychological. We got all these profiles of them, and they're just they got problems with authority and all this kind of stuff. And so, but Michael knows the subject of psychology better than anybody I've ever interviewed. Like it's unbelievable the level of depth and reading and research he's done of all the great psychologists, and then brought it out and threw it right back in their face. And when you want to do a psychoanalysis, let me talk about why you want to ignore evil happening around you, and you want to ignore the evil happening within you. And maybe those two things are connected. And on we go. The inner conspiracy. See, the reason these guys don't want to look at the external conspiracy, criminal activity, evil, whatever you want to call it, the rise of tyranny. The reason they don't want to look at that is because the psychoanalysis that Michael was doing is because they don't want to look at the inner conspiracy, where you're blinding yourself from the inner shadow and all these kinds of things. So it's a projection that we're seeing, right? So he absolutely torched him. And so I want to play this clip because it shows the other side of the story when it comes to this whole trust the experts thing, right? So let me just play it here, and then we will come back. Let me just get, where is it? There it is, local video. All right, sorry, just bear with me, guys. Here we go. This is the one. All right, it's about 7 minutes, so sit tight, and I'll let Michael break this down for you. Here we go.
Yeah, it's all bogus. They pick on these, sacred cows. They pick on the Illuminati all the time when they want to do this, because there is a certain knee-jerk reaction against that. But in our podcast on Enslaved, Illuminati Fact or Fiction, I think I proved the case that they exist.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have been pursuing this for 30 years of my life if I was mad. See, so when they call you out that you're a conspiracy theorist, it's one way of them really saying that you're insane. So if I was to talk to him, I'd say, then how will you go about proving that I am clinically insane, or in some other way deeply neurotic, whatever, pathological, let's say, because I've been doing this research since 1982. How would you then even go about, because you may have to call in a couple of psychiatric friends to do it. Yeah, but see, I happen to know that psychiatric people don't follow that lead. They don't even want to know about this stuff. So the man's platform is not as strong as he thinks. And even today, if you actually, meet one of these academics, often these are awards that have been given. They're probably not as intelligent as people think, right? The whole edifice right now is selective, and it's not it's not a meritocracy anymore, right? From philosophy all through the sciences, all through the humanities, you get picked based on your political, allegiance and affiliation, and other factors like that. You're not actually given awards and degrees anymore based in actual, knowledge. This was a long time proved by many scholars, particularly Alan Bloom, and other people have written on this. So I'm not intimidated by their so-called, degrees hanging on the wall. So if somebody has even 5-10 years behind them researching these things, they're going to have to take every one of those people, and even probably somebody who's got a multiple, publishing deal with some of the top publishers in the world. they're going to have to sit those people down and try to go through a process, an impossible process of diagnosing them as demented or pathological. How do you even do that? That would be evident if he could bring something and say, we've gone and selected 10 of the world's leading. We've got G. Edward Griffin strapped on here, so he's got a muzzle on because we don't want him talking, and we've got this guy and that guy, and get 7 others, right? And we have a team of experts here in the white coats, and they've proven all of these people clinically insane or pathological, and show me the documentation. Then there'd be a reason to get up on the, the hind legs and really you get into it. This is fatuous. This is for the proles. This is for the dumb show. These are the same people, mind you, mark you, that these are the same people. If they had the power of the old priestarchy that ruled for 2 and more thousand years, if they had the Victorian crackdown, the high stratification of these academic hierarchies, they would be telling you, they would be working to prevent you even asking the basic gateway questions that you come on this planet to ask. That's how dangerous these people are. Don't worry about conspiracy theories. They're going to go, oh, you want to ask who am I, where am I going, and what's my purpose? Go ahead, I love it. There's the conspiracy theorist. The other guy's going, what are you asking those questions for? We're going to fine you. Right. I think you need to be locked up. You need to be tested. What are you here for? Where are you going? What's it all about? And what's your purpose? How dare you ask those questions? You're meant to be an obedient worker. Get on with it. You see the difference? So the fear is they're not breaking out of their paradigms, right? We are busting the paradigms. From the outside, mavericks, amateurs, ordinary folks. That it's a terrible, terrible fear. And so they look back and say, for 2 and more thousand years, in one way or another, the human race has been entrapped, right? Entrapped by psychiatry in the latter years, and that goes back to almost 1770. You've been entrapped by religion, right? And you've been trapped by state government with all of its laws and regulations and all the things, right? We want you that way. How dare you get inspired by great movies, great physical teachers like Krishnamurti, right? Bruce Lee, all of you. We don't like that, and we're going to strike back, and we're going to test your muscle to see, how efficiently we can do it. So yeah, it's something I've been monitoring for a very long time. But when it comes to the Illuminati, it's actually not even that difficult. He actually picked a really stupid one there because it's actually quite easy to prove.
Yeah,
right. Because Moses Mendelssohn, Adam Weishaupt, Baron von Nige, right, the Duke of Brunswick, all of these people's writings show you that such a group existed. As to the fact of it dying out long ago, I've already debunked that, right, in my work. And also, what he doesn't tell you is that the most astute conspiracy theorists have proven the existence of this and other secret societies of a Masonic type by using the classic etymology and symbolism roads, where does that lead me, as hermeneutics, and he's not even mentioned that there are legitimate keys that any symbolist, right, even from within academia, would have to acknowledge: the cross keys of the Vatican, the mitre, the pyramid with the eye, right? Dude, we are following 2 disciplines that you will never mention in any of your writings on the, get them to write shit down, get them to confess. They'll never mention those 2 hermeneutics. And of course you don't, because those who use it have broken the trance. Those who've used it, making the greatest, biggest budget movies that the people you won't go after and call conspiracy theories. And I've been doing it since Alfred Hitchcock and before. And then the people like us who are also using those decoding decipherment techniques have come upon the existence of these secret societies. We haven't done it sitting behind some academic desk in Cornell. Nobody has. Right? And the ones who have done it from, say, within an academic framework, I know all about them. I've read their books. I've got them. People like Nicholas Hager, 7 books. Let's get Nicholas Hager and this guy together, and we'll see who wins the argument. A man who categorically has proven the existence of the Illuminati and its royalist, elitist funders, debunking the myth that they were anti-monarch, monarchistic and anti-royal. We've gone so far down the road. Professor Robinson in 1793, Proofs of a Conspiracy. Coming up to date, you've got Anthony Sutton from the Hoover Institute. Right? It dwarfs this guy's credentials. People at the highest level, even government, Gary Allen, right, and other senators, people at the highest level of the military.
Yeah, I was
What
just
was
popping
that?
up.
Could you read that out?
I was just popping. Yeah, I was just showing people as you were talking. I had a title there for Proofs of Conspiracy by John Robinson. He's a professor of natural philosophy and secretary to the Royal Society of Edinburgh, and he wrote it in 1798. So I guess he's must be another
Go to
tinfoil hat wearing
Wikipedia.
kook.
He's another. I'll tell you another one too. Go to the Wikipedia, type it anti-Masonic society. It was only headed by President Adams, Quincy Adams. President. That's right, president.
Didn't
Not flunky
Washington?
from some.
Didn't Washington call out
Yes,
the Jacobins and the Illuminati
he
when
called
the
out the
founding?
Illuminati.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're from memoirs that are in the Library of Congress. Go figure. We got them all through my work. That's why I say everything is, everything's stated from higher sources. The deans of various colleges, right? High level people, General Smedley Butler, people like that. Yeah, put an anti-Masonic society, America, 1700s. If it's good enough for President Adams, it's good enough for me. That's what you just say to a guy like that.
that's what you just say to a guy like that. Just boosh. What are you going to do now? Right? Like, and why? Why resist this? This is my question. Why resist this research, academics? There's a host of, let me just pull a couple. I literally, while he was talking, I ran to my shelf and I just grabbed a couple. I got so many of these. Put this book in your pipe and smoke it, boys. All right? Nicholas Hager. Also, I got this little juicy one. See that Masonic sign here? It's all, oh my God, opening these books. This is from the Grand Lodge of Canada. Grand Lodge of Canada. Okay. What's the date? 1864. And this is the charges of a Freemason for use of the lodges, right? From the Grand Order. And it just goes through masters and wardens and fellows and apprentices on behavior, right? And on and on. And it's a pretty basic book, but you got to study this thing. You got to study this thing. And again, I'm not that kind of person that throws the baby out with the bathwater. I know full well. So the people that are just fully thinking, "Ooh, all Freemasonry is just evil and corrupt." It's become corrupted in many regards, but not the whole history of the tradition or the traditions that they brought into their lodges and started studying. Those come from as far back as you can get. And many independent groups have it. And it's the origin of all the religions and everything else, right? So there's a whole history there that you got to get into of how, just as our governments have been penetrated, the cabinets have been penetrated, right? Like Klaus Schwab used to love to say. Your Masonic houses were penetrated. And then you got all the Christians and the religious people going, "Oh, well, yeah, see, they're evil, and then we're the house of light. We're just untouched." Are you kidding me? Like, seriously, you believe that? The public square cults weren't infiltrated after the occult private cults were infiltrated? You better think that one through. You got to get into people like this. Professor Anthony Sutton, Hoover Institute Intellectual, Order of Skull and Bones, America's Secret Establishment, Temple and the Lodge, right? Badgett and Lay, Alan Butler, Stephen Defoe, The Knights Templar Revealed, Stephen Knight, The Brotherhood, the expose of exposés on the secret world of Freemasons, they're infiltrated by communists. A History of Freemasonry in the State of New York by Osian Lang. Okay. And these are books written by people who were in the Masonic lodges, who were seeing the corruption and seeing the evil that happened. And then you got the guys that wrote about what happened in the Catholic Church. Good people. Look, you got this Archbishop Vigano talking about the whole plan. He right in there with the Vatican, saw it firsthand, went, "Oh my God, we're getting taken over by a bunch of Satanists pretending to be Christians," right? It's happened in the houses of Judaism. It's happened in Islam. We've covered this and endlessly on Unslaved, the cozy relationship between the Nazis and the communists, the alliances that were made you have to check it out on Unslaved, something called the Eastern Illuminati. There's factions of these people, these cults, these ancient cults have spread throughout the world. And we're going to get into the dark side of the Tibetan Buddhists and how they've been setting up houses and stuff all over your country in America and in Canada, and how they're actually servicing the UN religious sanctuary that we're going to get into. It's not a bunch of Jews running that one. It's not a bunch of Masons running that one. It's Tibetan Buddhists that are telling your kids they can be any spectrum of anything. This is where it all originates. But all of that stuff, no matter where you look, I've done a lot of stuff on this as well. If you go to my Truth Warrior Premium, getting into the people that are going to show you where the origin of those ideas came from, and how what we're looking at is the corrupted, filtered, edited version of the once great ideas in these ancient traditions. And then amateurs come in, usually these intellectual types come in, and they're so hyper-focused and expert, they can't look at things from a bigger generalist perspective and start putting pieces together. They don't have the minds of detectives. They have the minds of super hyper-focused experts that can only see one thing only. And that's why you don't go to the expert for the big 40,000-foot view. You go to the expert to get the details of a certain part of that picture that you're seeing from the 40,000-foot view. And then you got to zoom back out and you got to learn how to see the forest from the trees, right? So that's an important bit, is just understanding some of the lineage of this, the nuance of it. Not everybody's evil in all these things, but not everything that's happened is just pie in the sky either. We didn't get to the level of depravity, decay, social meltdown, social contagion, mass hysteria, propaganda, infiltration, centralizing power all over the place. We didn't get to this level with the inflation and all the problems, the wars. We didn't get to this level because the world is just ponies and rainbows and there's no such thing as conspiracies. We got to this level because there's something called evil. There's something called the corruption of the human mind. It's something at the base of consciousness itself, filters right down to the individual, every person walking. That is a factor here. So it's not just one way or the other. It's a dualistic thing where you're going to see, you got to be able to see the good and the evil. And I feel like people pick one of those only. There's the doomsday black pillars that only see the evil everywhere and under every carpet. And then there's the pie in the sky, hippie liberal types that see zero evil because they don't want to see the evil, because they're frightened little people that don't want to look at that and admit it, let alone admit the self-evil they're doing to themselves. So there's those extremes. The best thinkers are able to weed through all that bullshit, and you'll know it when you read them, and they'll go, no, let's stay focused on the facts. Let's stay focused on the details. Let's get it written down. And that's the last little bit I want to say before I go to this next clip, is that the big accusation you're going to get when you cover anything conspiratorial is that people who talk about conspiracies are always giving you these vague, wide generalizations. There's no specificity. There's no data to analyze. There's no anything behind it. It's all just theory and just smoky mirrors and all this kind of stuff. And that's because those critiques are aimed at the fake conspiracy researchers. Let's call them the fake ones, the people that are spreading propaganda and lies themselves while wearing the costume of being some renegade who's there challenging the authorities, right? There's also a lot of Pied Pipers. There's a lot of infiltrators as well. It's not just the governments who've been penetrated. All your alternative media has also been penetrated in a large degree. So you got to be watching out for that, right? And that makes sense. You start letting the cat out of the bag, the powers that be go, oh, what are we going to do? Do we just censor and lock everybody up? No, let's fan the flames a little bit and then put our own tidbits out there. We'll find the minds that are attracted to this stuff. We'll construct entire bullshit theories around it to attract them, and then get them out there, the sheep policing the sheep and keeping their minds under lockdown. Easy. Couldn't be easier. It's a very effective warfare strategy. So but what I'm here to say is that when you get into the level of the researchers Michael's talking about, reading from Baron von Nige, Duke of Brunswick, Anthony Sutton, Gilbert, these kind of people, we're not talking, some guy on Twitter or social media that just came to light yesterday and ended up on Joe Rogan. Like, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the high level actual experts who decided to come out and blow the whistle. We've got former presidents, military generals, insiders, journalists who were there, right? Those kind of people. That's who I like to study. So that's important to note, is that the real conspiratorial research field that most people that say they're into conspiracy theories have zero knowledge about, because they're all reading the Eddie Bravo shit all the time, the surface level kindergarten stuff. Most of it's bullshit. They don't go to this level. They go to whoever's, got the best communication skills, but not necessarily the best research faculties, right? I'm here to say, no, start. If you're new at this and you want to understand it, go to the actual experts, the people who were there. And we've got them all listed. I've listed them countless times. Make sure to take notes of these names and these books, and then just go look at it for yourself and find out that the critique coming from academia on conspiracy research is spurious in itself, because their accusation that it's just wide, vague generalizations and theories and projecting psychology is bullshit, because it's extremely specific, it's thoroughly documented, and it's reported eloquently and factually and rationally. It's not people with bullhorns and big signs yelling and screaming in the streets like a bunch of madmen as it's portrayed. And so that needs to be brought into bear. Okay. And I hope I gave you enough of that split there between the people that are saying there's no conspiracy and the people that are saying everything's a conspiracy. There's always extremes. Avoid the extremes. Stay on the straight and narrow, and follow the great minds who've already done the work for you. Okay. Next, I want to do something, because Michael was mentioning the symbols and how that's a doorway into starting to go, yeah, this is really weird how consistent this is. To say there's no occult agenda or occult aspect to world politics, to what's going on at Super Bowl halftime shows or in your commercials to sell you a bunch of stuff, or even the words and terms and rituals that your local politicians like Mark Carney are doing. If you know what you're looking at, you'll see right through the sheep's clothing that is being worn by the wolves. All right. And symbolism is the gateway. Symbolism is what's going to bring them down, because they do like to brag. They do like to communicate, and they do like to tell you who they are. And so the world of symbolism is where the real magic happens. So let's just get a little clip here to illustrate this fact. It comes from the late, great Jordan Maxwell. I had an opportunity to interview him before he passed away a few years back. This isn't from my interview, but this is just a video someone made to sort of summarize some of the bits. And so I just want to give you what he has to say on this one here. So let's take it away, Mr. Jordan Maxwell.
Once you begin to see how words and terms and symbols are used, and the powers that be in this world have set up a world of symbols and emblems and terms and catchphrases. Once you understand how this system works, for the first time, the world opens up to you. All of it is right in front of you. But if you don't understand what the words are and what the words mean, you're never going to figure out how this stuff works. There's a very sinister, frightening, interesting symbolism that has been imposed upon this country, and the people have no idea in the world what's going on. And I will guarantee you, no matter how educated you might think you are, I will guarantee you, you have no idea in the world how the world actually works. I have discovered many years ago that words and magical systems dominate the world that we live in. There is, in point of fact, a magical matrix at work. I've always been interested in the occult. Occult is simply a word meaning hidden, and so much of our powers in this world and the way things work are hidden. And the more one looks at this subject of how the world actually works, you begin to see that there's a magical system, and I'm telling you, there really is a magical system dominating the world of the Western civilization. And once you begin to see the symbols and realize that the symbols for the national coats of arms for countries, the flags, the seals, the presidential seals, the emblems for the logos and emblems on corporations, especially the corporate emblems for motion pictures and television companies like Columbia Broadcasting System. CBS has the eye. The Colombian system goes back to the Colombian faction of the Illuminati back in the early 1700s, not the late 1700s. And you begin to see why space shuttle is called Columbia. You have Columbia University, Columbia Pictures, Columbia Broadcasting. Columbia is a very interesting word, and it's connected to the Jesuits. Once you begin to see how words and terms and symbols are used, and of course symbols are extraordinarily important in world affairs, all of a sudden it opens up, as I said, a whole new perspective on how stuff is happening.
It does indeed open up a new perspective, and that's what kind of got me into it. And once you see it, you don't unsee it. And again, symbols, you're going, well, isn't that sort of subjective interpretation when you see symbols? Yeah, of course. You see a symbol and you bring a part of your mind to it and you go, meet that symbol halfway, and this is what the symbol looks like to me. And you think that's the end of it. But these guys don't care what you think about the symbols. They're not asking you, the most powerful people in the world that use these symbols all over the bloody place in Hollywood and in the banking world, the political world, everything. They don't care what you think about it or what I think about it. It's about what they think about it and why they are using it. And it also doesn't mean the symbols or the knowledge within the world of what we call the occult tradition or the mystery tradition or the ancient traditions or even the religious traditions or the political philosophical traditions. None of them of itself is something that's necessarily evil or conspiratorial. It's just that bad people with a desire for power, figured out that symbols work on human consciousness because consciousness works. If we can help direct and inspire the human mind and access the human drives by way of not just symbols, but ritual and the whole thing. If we can use magic, which is just how do we interface with human consciousness and get human consciousness to bring about the world that we want, well, we just need to use the symbolic archive to do it, because the symbolic archive, here's the spoiler, it all comes from nature. So it's not evil. It's just being used for evil purposes by certain evil people. Other people who see those symbols in a positive light or understand what they actually mean are able to explain that stuff to you in a way that's not negative. So this is where you get your fundamentalist types that see any symbol that is not part of their religious canon and immediately cast it into the flames of calling it evil. That's just a level of medieval ignorance that they still possess in those minds. Right? That's just how I see it. But if you understand that it's not that symbols are good or evil, they're just amoral. They're reflections of nature and they're an expression of human consciousness from time past. The reason those symbols are powerful is because we have this sort of phylogenetic memory in our minds. And we interpret reality by way of interpreting it symbolically in the right brain. And then it filters over to the left brain and interprets what we're seeing and informs our perspective on things. And there's a relationship that's happening with the symbolic world. This is why art is so powerful, why music is so powerful, why film is so powerful. And art, film, music, writing, symbols, religion can be something used to uplift and open humanity's mind. But it can also be used to put it in a cage. It's like anything else, right? A hammer can build a house or it can whack someone on the head and take them out. So it's the hand that wields it. Just want to put that out there because there's a lot of people in this movement that, again, jump to conclusions, Matt. They have no idea what they're talking about. And it's amateur hour, sadly, when it comes to analyzing symbolism. But that doesn't mean there isn't any conspiracy happening, because you start to see, all right, is it any coincidence that the symbols used are very consistent across the board and interpreted within the esoteric occult tradition? We know that there's sort of a white magic, black magic dynamic that happens with every device and every symbol. And if you see a pattern where these symbols are used to inspire political movements, to create big NGOs and think tanks and world organizations, UNs and World Banks and WEFs and all this kind of stuff. And they're using magical, ancient, occult symbols to sport and put out front. as are the same thing going on in your religious institutions, right? The reason that's so powerful is because they understand why your mind attracts to those symbols. And that's the power. It's a siphoning mechanism to bring you in. And this is how the cults work that we documented. Heaven's Gate, Jim Jones, take your pick. Order of the Solar Temple, right? Or a political cult like this wokeism stuff going on. Symbols. Look at everybody donning symbols and costumes and rituals, and we're part of teams now. We're all going to color our hair the same and wear the same clothes, and everybody's toenails are painted now, and we're all doing the ice bucket challenge, and we're all on board with this, and it's we, group. We're doing this. We're going to fix the world. You see that? That's recruitment. By weaponizing your virtue and blinding you with the light. This is how the predator would work. They wouldn't walk up. The wolf doesn't present itself in wolf's clothing. I feel like that's what happens when people analyze this stuff. They're expecting the specter to just jump out and go, I'm the specter. Like, that's not how psychopaths work. That's not how criminals work, right? They're going to wear the sheep's clothing and pretend they're one of you. They're going to come into your favorite things and pretend they're a fan of those things just like you are. This is how the political world, this is how the Masonic lodges were able to attract elite aristocracy into their houses so that they could start getting into the positions of power, get their guys in, and also mold their minds and mold their opinions. Okay, so this is where we're going to get into this presentation now with some of the work from Dr. Carrie Bolton. And I'll have to pull this back in. And you're going to see what I'm talking about here. So this book, again, is called The Occult and Subversive Movements, Tradition and Counter-Tradition in the Struggle for World Power by Dr. Carrie Bolton. You can get it on Kindle. It's a fantastic read. And I just pulled out a few tidbits here that I would like to go through with you. And I will also post below, after the show is done, I'll post some links that you can go and flesh some of these ideas out a little bit more after we're done. But let me bring this in here. So he's saying here that the impetus of this movement, he's talking about the movement of the internationalists and this sort of secret society connection, okay? The impetus of this particular movement formally goes back to the 19th century when the first Congress of the World's Parliament of Religions was held in Chicago in 1893. He's speaking about the movement known as the movement to create a world government. Okay, this is the conspiracy that, to me, is undeniable. It's happening right now in front of our eyes. The only debate today is whether or not it's a good or a bad thing. And I think it's a bad thing. And we're going to get into why. But yeah, so this is what he's saying. This is something that goes back to 1893. He said, next, the World Fellowship of Faiths was co-founded by two communists, K. Das Gupta and Charles F. Weller in the USA in 1924. Go look those guys up. Its first Congress was held in 1933 under the co-chairmanship of Jane Addams, also a prominent communist. Jane Addams, I think, is on Tessarian's female Illuminati list. She was an initiate of co-masonry headed by Annie Besant, the Theosophical president. Addams was also an investor in Lenin's Russian-American Industrial Corporation and in the Communist Federation Press, and a member of the Federal Council of Churches, U.S. Constitute of the World Council of Churches, whose, quote, Christianity is inimical and communistic. Have you heard about Christian communism? I did a whole presentation on my Truth Warrior Premium about it. Very interesting. It's kind of infested everywhere, this sort of extreme leftism that I believe was fermented in the bellies of these secret societies before the French Revolution. And it's relevant to what's happening because this is the force that's taking over your government right now. Member of the Council of Churches, who Christianity was communistic. Charles F. Weller was a millionaire communist, which is always a funny thing, eh? The millionaire communists, the champagne socialists, whose organization of the Fellowship of Faiths in the USA received the enthusiastic support of Supreme Court Justice Samuel Untermeyer, a confidant of President Woodrow Wilson. You know, the guy that wrote in regret about basically teaming up with the Illuminati to overthrow the government. The Fellowship Congress for 1936 was held in London, England. Good old London. Freemasonry was taking an interest in this movement. So this is where they're getting into the fact that it's these communist leftists that started to revolutionize the bellies of Freemasonry at this time. So Freemasonry was taking an interest in this movement as explained by the speculative Mason, quote, a different effort to promote world fellowship as seen in the Congress of Faiths. The plans were outlined by Sir Francis Younghusband. He pointed out that they were trying to set up a body of opinion that would form the basis of, wait for it, a new world order, which everyone now was wanting to see established, a spiritual basis for the League of Nations. Freemasons should make an effort to attend this unsectarian, non-political effort towards world unity. So, thinking about this a little bit, he's talking about the League of Nations, which we know was the precursor to the United Nations that our politicians today just love so ever so much. And you might argue that maybe some of these Masons and some of these people that were involved in the original movement towards some sort of world unity project or world peace project were humanitarians that were trying to do good. And they were trying to look at the best of the ancient knowledge as a way to help achieve peace in the world, unity amongst humanity, progress towards the future, right? The dream of the utopian world, right? And you can't slight the average person out there for wanting to achieve that. I think that's a sort of hidden desire of all of us, that we would love to see a better, brighter world where we're all coming together and we're not killing each other over every little thing and it's fair and all these are the dreams of humanity. Okay. But here's the problem. The psychopath who seeks only power and dominion is going to read all this shit and go, hey, this is the way in. This is the sales pitch. This is the carrot on the stick. Now, setting aside the arguments about whether some kind of a world like that is even possible, because it would have to go against a lot of aspects of human nature in order to achieve, which means you need communist re-education camps, and then you need central power, and then you need tyranny. And then we've done the experiment how many times, right? In how many different countries, in how many different time periods, where this type of liberty, fraternity, unity, equality, justice, blah, 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 that sort of vein, right? Where did that even come from? It came from the Masonic lodges. It came from the religious traditions. It came from the occult world. Again, in the beginning, you can't slight everybody for being evil for trying to push something like this. But evil people saw this as the best way to come through the door and then don the sheep's clothing and go, hey, we are the ones fighting for truth, justice, and liberty and unity and all this stuff. But then you see the trail of bodies and corruption and debauchery and degeneracy and evil that festers underneath that costume that they like to wear. And you find the psychopaths, you find the Satanists, you find the people that know how to get into even those powerful movements and warp them towards their aims, right? So, but he is putting it out there from the high levels. Their goal was to establish a new world order, all right. And then when you fast forward to the 90s, where you got George Bush Sr. talk about New World Order, and then all the other guys, all the, Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, all the politicians, Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, like last week, talking about New World Order. They're all talking about it. What do they mean? Well, the new liberal world order. And then you go, okay, what do we do with this? Well, even the word liberal doesn't mean what it used to mean, right? The Canadian Liberal Party is not full of a bunch of classic Hayek-like liberals, that came from the Enlightenment era. These are raging socialists and communists that have been drawn in because of those ideological leanings by the psychopaths that don't give a shit about what thing you're into. They just want power. And they know you're a useful idiot. And they're going to put you in and they're going to fund you and promote you and pat you on the back when you do good work for them. You might be a well-meaning person, but the people that aren't so well-meaning, they got the puppet strings connected to your head, right? So interesting little lineage here. We're going to continue a little bit more. He continues, the reader will note the reference by Masonry in 1936 to a New World Order in conjunction with the League of Nations, the failed predecessor of the United Nations organization. the concept of world unity, and the interests of Freemasonry. The front man for this movement was General Sir Francis Younghusband, who had led a British military expedition to Tibet. Here we go, to Tibet in 1903 to 1904, and had become enamored by Tibetan religion. The plot thickens, my friends. Anybody that's followed what I've been talking about for a while, the plot thickens here because I saw that and I went, wait a minute. Did you just say basically the Freemason that had been talking about how we need to build a new world order, that was part of the League of Nations project and that wanted to continue that practice, went and became enamored with Tibetan religion, and then in these expeditions, no doubt went and studied under these Tibetan masters? Okay, hold the phone. The Dark Side of Tibetan Buddhism. I got a few here, a few of my slides. You have to read this book. It's by Christine Chandler. She's a survivor of this cult, and she writes an incredible expose on it. You have to read this book, and I just do a little summary of this book. She says this: I spent almost 30 years inside the cult of Tibetan tantric Lamanism that calls itself Buddhism. All that time, I believed I was a student of the highest of Buddhist teachings and a non-theist on an individual spiritual path, a diamond vehicle that would lead to greater awareness and freedom. That was its pitch and promise. Isn't it always? It's always that. That's the pitch and promise of all the cults. Instead, she says, I became part of a powerful group mind, less spontaneous in my behavior and less aware of what was happening inside the group and outside of my cult milieu. I was indeed less free, oath-bound as I was to these lamas and their dogmatic, superstitious, ritualistic, and sometimes very frightening world filled with god kings, deities, hell realms, and demons. There's very few people that have actually studied Tibetan Buddhism. If you do, you'll be shocked. She says, I also discovered Shambhala leaders kept files on us. So you're talking about these Shambhala institutions? Yeah. So they operated identical to the KGB. Listen to what she says. This is her testimony because she was there for like 20 years. I also discovered Shambhala leaders kept files on us through end of retreat blue book tests given at later Shambhala levels, as these weekend retreats were called. These tests served two purposes: to make us feel comfortable, believing we were studying something similar in nature to our Western college and university classes, so they knew how to butter it up a little bit, and to measure the level of indoctrination of the group. It also told the inner circle whom to keep an eye on if they were trouble, asked too many questions, or criticized the material in their answers. These people would be weeded out by the group. Sounds very much like how it works in politics. She continues, Shambhala was set up to appear very comfortable to educated Westerners because Shambhala training programs were set up to specifically target our population, the well-educated, middle-class, liberal Westerner, and to keep us hooked. This was done in such a way that by just coming to learn to meditate and relax, we would be caught by teachings that appeared intellectual, reasonable, and even logical at first. Even though all of it, the meditation, the instructions, and the tantric practices, were designed to purposely dissolve our intelligent, rational, and logical minds. My God, the amount of victims of this, it's mind-blowing. The Dalai Lama uses the same exterior of being academically oriented when he gathers intellectuals around him at his Mind and Life Institute and the many spin-off foundations and centers that he has set up, connected to our prestigious Western universities or through a university's religious studies department. By the way, the Dalai Lama came out openly and admitted that he was ideologically a Marxist. So what does that tell you? He's also got a lot of ties to the CCP party. The Dalai Lama is continually invited to seminars at these same universities, often sponsored by his own foundations, centers, and associations. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people know the amount of money that goes through there. Where he talks a lot about science and scientific research on the benefits of mindfulness meditation and its proven connection to universal happiness. Then he goes back to Dharamsala and consults a demon-possessed oracle for all of his major decisions. And then I skipped this part, but I did get into the actual sauce on that. That's actually what they do. Consult the oracles. Now, here we go. The Karma Kagyu, the founder of Chogyam Trungpa's sect, and Chogyam Trungpa is quite the character to go and study, my friends, when it comes to this. Go write that name down and go look it up. Have been building temples, monasteries, and creating foundations and organizations, thousands of them all over the world, most notably in the United States, but also in China and Chinese-speaking nations. The Kagyu Lamas have always been the most popular among Western Tibetan Buddhists, but I imagine no matriculating student nor their parents will learn this history about Naropa University and its global connections and ties. Keeping secrets are some of the skills these Tantric Buddhic professors at Naropa have mastered. So here they are setting up their institutions in America. Now here he is, Chogyam Trungpa. He's flashing up the Illuminati symbol. By the way, a lot of those hand signs and whatnot that you see and all this stuff, it comes from the East. Comes from the East. Don't forget about where the Knights Templars, their liaisons in the East, all this kind of stuff. And they've got these characters in modern times, like these Masons that went to Tibet and went to the East, brought a lot of that in. It was already in Templarism, which is sort of the guts of Masonry, and it just kind of spurred on from there. So just want to add that little bit in there. Yeah, he was accused of raping students. There's a lot of, like, the amount of pedophilia. I did a whole section on the amount of the rampant pedophilia in these Tibetan cults. It'll blow your mind. She continues, the Tibetan guru's history is always made into fairy tales. Now, listen to this, okay? She's talking about how they erase history and reprogram you. This is something that's part of this far left Masonic communistic playbook, okay? Now, the Lamist hierarchy does it with the help of Westerners who turn it into hagiography with the help of a controlled media. This is the only history that Western Tibetan Buddhists and the public then learn. History is not real anyway, Tibetan Lamas tell their students. They do not believe in history, at least not Western-based factual accounts. The only history they come to believe in and teach others with religious fervor is the Lama's divine history. And what are your kids in school telling you now? What are they being taught by their Marxist professors who've been educated by similar ideologies that she's describing? We got to rewrite history, not because there are actual instances in history we have to go and check up on, okay? There's legitimate historical correction, okay? But then there's rewriting history so that you can change the premise of the worldview of that child from a pro-Western stance to a pro-communistic Eastern stance, into a mystical cult stance, and get them blinded by the light. Same process, right? That's what they're teaching these kids. Reality doesn't exist. This is all just Tibetan, Eastern mysticism stuff, right? Reality doesn't exist. Your body is a cage. It's all Gnosticism. It comes from ancient Gnostic cults. Your body is a cage of the soul. The mind is all that matters. And you have to dissolve your ego, get rid of logical thinking. All the logic and scientific progress of the West is all evil. The history is all a lie. It's all just slavery, sexism, homophobia, all those things. It's evil. And you're being taught this by actual child predators, okay? Just so you know, when you look at their track record. And this is what's at the guts of what's being put into the sustainable development goals. All the writers of them are part of these cults. You can see it in their writing. We're going to get into the United Nations and the origin of that. But it's an ideology that comes out of secret occult orders that spilled into the social and political milieu over time by design. To do what? To program the public mind. That's how you take a country. This is Yuri Bezmenov protocol. Destabilization, demoralization, crisis. The crisis could be as simple as you've been lied to about all of your history. Let me reprogram you with the real history. And the real history just so happens to correspond with the agenda that they want and the cult doctrine, right? This is how they roll. And then normalization of the new doctrine. This is the Yuri Bezmenov prescription for how they operate. And that's what we see. That's what we see. Okay, so that's the end of the slides I wanted to share from that Dark Side of Tibetan Buddhism presentation. Please go and support me on Substack and go and check that one out specifically, because I give you a lot more history on Keith Raniere, Nexium. It gets into some Epstein stuff, the connections, Maxwell. A lot of these guys are in Hollywood. They have their own private tantric Buddhist sort of mentor. This is also in the whole like new age world and in the personal development field that's become infiltrated by this crap. This new age Eastern mysticism. We've done tons of this stuff on Unslaved as well, exposing it. Okay. But let's fast forward now back up to our subject here, where we're talking about the globalist agenda for a new order of the world and basically to centralize all the power into one ring of power to rule them all. That's what that sustainable development rainbow ring is that all of your politicians wear. They are either useful idiots or card-carrying members of this cult. Okay. They're showing you what they are, and they're putting the policies in place, and they're reading the teleprompters, and they're taking the cash behind the scenes. Many of them are probably compromised, and they're marching along with the agenda. And that's why your economies are imploding. That's why your government is changing. That's why it's getting more tyrannical. And that's why the propaganda is being effective, because these people understand psychology. They understand how to do this, and they've got the cult playbook on their desk. And that's how they recruit you to political causes. It's as old as going back to before the French Revolution, if not before. So here we go. Let's get into the United Nations. He's got this section called UN, the Holy of Holies. The Lucis Trust, maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. You should go check it out. The organization that was founded by Alice Bailey is the guardian of the UN Meditation Room. Did you know the UN had a meditation room? Among the networks of the Bailey movement that spawned the present-day New Age phenomenon is the Seven Rays Institute. Seven Rays. A spokesperson for Stephen Rays, Stephen Nation, in an address on the spiritual and esoteric significance of the UNO, including the UN Meditation Room, described the UNO as a focus for occultists. Specifically, he did. Okay. And I'll tell you about who he is in a second. He began his address by leading his audience through a guided meditation, during which he termed the UN General Assembly a temple and the meditation room as the Holy of Holies. He alluded to the nature of the altar in the room as being specifically Masonic and described Hammarskjöld, I can't pronounce that name, as a mystic and visionary. UN activities are called occult rituals that are working on humanity on a subconscious level. In the course of the address, Mr. Nation mentioned his own Masonic background. He was also a staff member for 20 years at the Lucis Trust headquarters in London and is founder of the Triangle Centers in New Zealand. Okay, so let me pause this one and let me bring in the background on this chap here. There he is. All right. Do we see it? Okay, we see it. Let me bring it up. It's very small. So it's almost pointless for me to bring it up. It's so small. Let me just get rid of this and I'll just read it for you. Kill that. Sorry about that. Okay, so United Nations Days and Years Meditation Initiative is the title, and it's giving you Steve Nation's background. Steve Nation is a writer and speaker on meditation and global issues. He is co-founder of Intuition in Service and the United Nations Days and Years Meditation Initiative. From 1979, he worked for almost 20 years at the London office of World Goodwill and Lucis Trust, there it is, and is now director of the New York office of World Goodwill. We might want to doge that one, guys. We might want to go and look into some of these World Goodwill foundations, see where the money's really going to. Since 2002, he has coordinated an annual global meditation vigil for the International Day of Peace. He serves on the Council of the Spiritual Caucus at the United Nations and writes a regular column about the United Nations for the UK journal Caduceus. That's the name of the journal. Okay. Now, yes, I can show you this one. Let me show you this one. Yeah, here you go. So you can go to this site. I'll put the links below. But this is the spiritualcaucus.org. So this is the website talking about the Spiritual Caucus at the United Nations. And this is just Secretary Dag Hammarskjöld. That's the guy that Kerry Bolton was mentoring from his dedication of the United Nations Meditation Room. So this is from the actual dedication he did when the Meditation Room was founded in the UN. He says, "We all have within us a center of stillness surrounded by silence. This house, dedicated to work and debate in the service of peace, should have one room dedicated to silence in the outward sense and stillness in the inner sense." And this is that Shambhala crap. This is that meditate away your rational mind and get into the stillness and peace so that we can start to subliminally put our doctrine into your mind instead. That's just how I see it. What do they say on the About page? The spiritual, is this still showing? Yeah. The Spiritual Caucus supports the aims of the United Nations as expressed in the preamble to the UN Charter. We seek to balance and strengthen the endeavors of the UN system and its affiliates with inner reflection and stillness. We meet from September to June at the UN headquarters via Zoom to spend time together in silent reflection, share our insights, and explore ways of using this inner focus to serve the highest potential of the UN. Anyone interested in supporting the UN in this way is welcome to join us, and blah, blah, blah. So they got the regular meetings, the council members. There he is, Steve Nation, World Goodwill. We could go through each one to see all these different people, but these are a lot of new age hippie types, you know. And so on the surface, everybody's like, what's your problem with this? Well, let me tell you what the problem is. Let's get back into the slides. Wherever they are. I'll have to bring them back in again. Hold on. Sorry. This thing's not behaving. Okay, let me find my spot here. I think we were on like this one. We've been there. Yes, yes. Okay, here we go. Continuing on. Kerry Bolton. It should be kept in mind that one of the primary activities of this esoteric network established by the Baileys is to coordinate adherents across the world to meditate on specific objectives towards the creation of a new world order. Thus, the notion of a, quote, occult war cannot be offhandedly dismissed as an unfounded conspiracy theory, he says. Even so, skeptics will ridicule the notion of occultists influencing the collective unconscious of humanity across the world, but one might consider 2 points that are scientifically grounded. Number 1, Carl Jung's theory of the collective unconscious. Number 2, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's theory of the morphic field and of morphic resonance, which is analogous to the occult concept of the astral plane or of the Akashic record. It goes back into ancient times. Hence, where the occultist states that there is an Akashic record that contains memories of a type of psychic filing system, and what Jungians call archetypes, this is explained by Sheldrake as the means by which genetic memory can be transmitted between organisms and through generations as an organizing principle. He states in regard to the human organism and the part played by ritual and the so-called psychic, quote, human societies have memories that are transmitted through the culture of the group and are mostly explicitly communicated through the ritual reenactment of a founding story or myth, as in the Jewish Passover celebration, the Christian Holy Communion, and the American Thanksgiving dinner, through which the past become present through a kind of resonance with those who have performed the same rituals before. So nothing evil about it, but can be used for evil. Make no mistake about that. The morphic fields of social groups connect together members of the group even when they are many miles apart. Just think of the 100th monkey effect. And provide channels of communication through which organisms can stay in touch at a distance. There's also the whole research into the psychic spies of the CIA and, remote viewing and all that. They help provide an explanation for telepathy. Telepathy is not normal is normal, not paranormal, natural, not supernatural, and is also common between people, especially people who know each other well. The morphic fields of mental activity are not confined to the insides of our heads. They extend far beyond our brain through intention and attention. The fields of our mind extend far beyond our brains. Of course, this is contentious in science. That's why Rupert Sheldrake was taken off with his TED Talk. But he's got loads of actual scientific analysis to back up what he's saying. And so you wonder, these occultists, they see this research. What do? They build a meditation room and a whole kumbaya cult in the bellies of the UN. And they do all kinds of mass ritual events to try to persuade and change human consciousness. This is the ultimate re-education program, but it's done on a subliminal occult level. That's what he's saying. So Bolton continues here. Sheldrake offers empirical evidence that we might apply to explain how the intervention of occultists through coordinated worldwide meditation and ritual could result in mind manipulation on a mass universal scale. It is against this background that we might give more serious attention to the coordinated global activities of occultists attempting to change human consciousness and usher a new world order and the reign of their pro-Bolshevik Mahatmas. In such a context, we might consider Stephen Nation's depiction of the UN General Assembly as a temple serving as a world gathering point for esoteric worship. And this is from Steve himself. And now imagine that the peoples of the world move back. There's a ritualistic movement. They stand around the walls of the temple. Visualize them forming a vast circle. And in the midst of this great gathering of the world's people, within the great temple, picture another smaller temple right at the corner of the gathering. And imagine that this smaller temple takes a form through what we've all seen on television. It is in the form of the General Assembly of the United Nations. So Stephen Nation referred to the UN as the temple of humanity in the context of his Masonic background. Esoterically, he has visions of the UN as the focus of occult rituals. Quote, some of my most profound experiences in Freemasonry happened when I would sense the walls of the Masonic temple dissolving and feel as if I was witnessing and taking part in a ceremony within the General Assembly of the United Nations. I mean, the guy's just admitting it here, man. All right. So Mr. Nation regards the UN as the focus of the avatar of synthesis, the New Age Messiah or hidden master, the anointed one or Maitreya, who is expected to establish the syncretic universal cult of the New World Order, hence the reference to synthesis. The Lucius Trust and the myriad of groups springing therefrom were founded to prepare this syncretic cult and to pave way for this avatar. Here's another quote from Stephen Nation. These experiences have always stayed with me and have been deeply reinforced upon occasions when I have been fortunate enough to visit the UN centers in Geneva, New York, or Nairobi, to stand in the awesome space of the Grand Assembly, or to sit in the UN meditation room and feel the presence of the avatar of synthesis. Like, what in the actual fuck is this guy on? You know? So Bolton continues, the UN meditation room is given the status of the Holy of Holies, like literally, guys, this is what they call it. And it could be asked whether this is supposed to be the location or the earthly incarnation of this avatar of synthesis. Mr. Nation places this on par with the Ark of the Covenant as the dwelling place of God, speaking of the UN meditation room, quote, and whenever you go there, align with all your coworkers from wherever you are in the world and feel their presence there with you. That room is like the Holy of Holies, the most sacred place in some of the most ancient temples. Mr. Nation gives special significance to the iron ore block altar and describes the importance attached to it by Hammarskjöld. He confirms the contention made above that the block is a Masonic altar. Quote, and just as in some of the Egyptian temples, there in the UN meditation room, the dominant, powerful image is of this huge, wonderful block of iron ore. This rock was brought from Sweden by Dag Hammarskjöld. He was a mystic and a visionary who took such care in the quarrying of the stone. It was so heavy and difficult to ship to New York, and the design of the building had to be charged and a whole new foundation built to accommodate the weight of that stone. So it shows you how much they put into symbolism here, eh? Just the cost alone. When you go into the room, you feel its presence. I always felt that because it is a diagonal shape, and it is incredibly Masonic because it is composed of squares. And the final bit here, Mr. Nation considers the gathering of the UN to be the equivalent of collective magical rituals when he says, quote, now I don't need to remind a group of esotericists that this view of UN activity as ritual involves a recognition that what's happening at a deep unspoken level at these conferences is the, quote, invocation and evocation of energies. So they're doing some seances and shit in there. Again, we might consider this a conjunction with Sheldrake's theory of morphic resonance before such views are dismissed as the fantasies of a harmless crank. Regardless of how one considers these views, the important factor is, as always, how these beliefs are being actioned on a practical level. The question that might be asked is, why does the administration of the UN permit a private network of occultists to play such an important role in this organization, to the extent of being the custodians of the UN meditation room that was considered of such importance to Hammarskjöld? And then he continues on more. He gets into the altar. He goes very specific bit by bit in the book, the whole chapter on it, and breaks it all down in details to what's really going on at the United Nations. And I remember even seeing articles coming out when we were in lockdowns about some of the rituals and stuff and the prayers and the meditations they were doing at these centers. They did that whole unifying online. Remember that Home Alone online thing that they did with all the celebrities singing songs and juggling for you while you were all in lockdown, while they were robbing your economy blind and systematically destroying your countries, and all these kind of things. And then you start to zoom out and you get into the work of people like Michael Tsarian, who's done decades of research on ancient occult symbols being used in media, in education, etc. And then what Jordan Maxwell is bringing up about the fact that we live in a magical world, a world dominated by magic, good and bad, not just one way, but it's there. It's not something people really see. And these are the powers that are fighting over the thrones of the earth right now. And it's also that if you take that macro picture I just painted and then bring it within, this is the same dynamic that happens inside all of us, inside of our psyches on an individual level. So they know that, and they know how to recruit you into the process by the hypnotic suggestion, right? And then I could sit here and roll out all the research done in these MK Ultra, MK Often, all these in cult of intelligence programs where they were trying to find ways to get the individual to act against his own will. They were trying to find ways to manipulate the mind of the individual. And then they zoomed up. You get into the work of people like Jim Keith, who talks about how they create mass hypnosis and mass mind control, right? Get his book, Mass Control, and read all about it, the technology to do it. And it's even more sophisticated now. And then you just witnessed it in real time, and you are witnessing it still with these mass movements that are suddenly energized. And what was the thing that energized them? Where all these people are just, it's like that NPC meme where they're taking out one brain chip and installing the next latest thing into their head. And they're waiting for the next marching order. Like, what's the next thing I have to be pissed off about? What's the next protest going to be about? What's the next thing that's going to get me throwing Molotov cocktails around the city? You know, what's the next thing I'm going to be having meltdowns on social media about? And what's the next flag I'm supposed to fly in front of my house? What's the next t-shirt I'm supposed to be wearing? What's the next cause am I supposed to be fighting for? What's the next diet I'm supposed to be on? What's the next form of meditation I should be in? Where's the next church I should be joining? Everybody's waiting for marching orders. From who? The architects of your mind, right? The hidden persuaders. These people, the occultists, the hidden ones, not the people you see on TV. Those are just the acolytes. Those are the people that went through the rituals already, whether they know it or not. And they graduated, and now they've been put up the rank, and they're paid off, and they're going to take you and recruit you into the cult. It's like a big, giant global MLM. And now they want to recruit. That's what the UN is. They want to recruit all the countries in the world to the UN, and they're going to send their missionaries to your door, like the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons knock on your door. Have you heard the good word of the United Nations and the new global cult that we're preparing? Have you heard about the good word of the New World Order, the 7 rays of light? Have you heard about this? Have you read the latest tract of the new woke doctrine? Have you read about the 17 planks of sustainable development that are going to absolutely destroy your economy and bring you into central power, run out of Davos? Right? It's a recruitment program for a cult. And you're like, Dave, you're being hyperbolic. No, I'm not. Not when they're talking about this. Not when they're bringing actual Masons and secret society members to create ritual ceremonies in these organizations that then go on to influence political government policy in your country and get you signing on to all kinds of, oh my God, all these bills and all these agreements, accords, all the Paris Climate Accords. What's an accord? It's not just a car. Was it Honda, the Honda Accord? That word accord, that's an occult term. The symbol of Honda, the word Honda, these are all deities and gods and goddesses. Saturn, right? I mean, the more you get into it, it's incredible. It's a magical world right in front of your eyes. So why do the academics run away from this shit? Because it is a little mystical and mysterious, and they don't like that. They like the hard. I want 82 peer-reviewed scientific studies by other PhD experts that are all just micro-managing one subject. They can't see the forest from the trees. I'll trust them. And for some reason, these academic types just have no ability to synthesize data and look at the big picture and go, well, if it acts like an occult doctrine and it dresses like an occult doctrine and it sports the occult symbols and it sounds like the occult doctrine that came out of the Bavarian Illuminati and the Memphis House and the French Jacobins, right? And the Templars and the Eastern factions and the Eastern mystical traditions, right? If it sounds like that in your political world and in your media world, maybe it fucking is an occult agenda. You know what I mean? You see Klaus Schwab getting up with his costumes on and all this shit. What do you think that is? The fact that he's got knighthoods and multiple knightly orders that go way, way back to these ancient groups, and they're connected to royals and black nobility families from Europe. And the same thing in the Saudi Arabia and the whole thing. Like, there's a whole underground world going on, all right. And when you get down to the level of, like, I don't know, a Doug Ford or a Mark Carney, well, Mark Carney would definitely outrank a Doug Ford. But like, you got these local politician guys that are just singing the song sheet about what we need to do to march towards what? Canada becoming a post-national state in the new order. We're going to go join the EU. We're going to go become a member of China. Like, that's that side now. Why? Because this is the marching orders that comes from the UN headquarters, that gets their marching orders from these higher up think tanks behind the doors, these Club of Rome groups and whatnot. And then that keeps going into the Memphis cults, and that goes into the Mithraic cults in Rome and the Vatican and the bellies of the beast there. And it keeps going, you know, and there's levels to this game. And it's not just like some movie script that I'm telling you about, even though it sounds like it. It's thoroughly documented by academic level people and whistleblowers and insiders that I could trace back hundreds of years. We could go back to statements from dukes and princes and royalty from the 1700s, my friends. I've already done it. You can go check out the Occult Conspiracy, the two-parter that I did on Truth Warrior Premium. On Unslaved, we have an incredible archive of shows getting into the history of the Templars and these orders. And I'm talking, it gets to a very, very high degree of scholarship and source material. All right. So it's not just a bunch of theorizing, but you do have to theorize sometimes in this movement. You do have to speculate a little bit. And I don't think the academics like that, even though they forget that speculation and theorizing is what led to the greatest discoveries we've ever had. And the people that made those discoveries in science were basically treated like a bunch of mystics that didn't know what they were talking about. Half of them were either executed or imprisoned or shamed publicly or dethroned or kicked out of their positions, burnt at the stake, like And yet it turned out they were true. And yet today, the average intellectual is still frozen in this paralyzing fear of being called mean names by their fellow academics. Like, what are you doing? Help humanity go for it. I'm just here to encourage you to go for it if you're sitting on the fence. And again, we love you for the covering and exposing the corruption you do see here, but you can't stop at the World Economic Forum. You can't stop at some globalist thing. You can't stop at a bunch of radical leftists or communist China or whatever, the threats from Iran. You can't stop there. That is the public effect of this hidden occult magical world that's going on. You got to go there. And when you find out that members from that magical occult world are in political positions influencing the direction of these organizations that are influencing the direction of your countries, you might want to pick up a couple books by Nicholas Hagar and Anthony Sutton and, oh my God, Gerard Griffin, Michael Tessarian, Jordan Maxwell. You might want to go and read some of those before just like pushing it up. Oh, a bunch of conspiracy theory. And then there's that problem where, because I'm with these critiques on the fact that there's so much bullshit and baggage and amateur hour going on in this field. But what do you think that's from? That's to be expected. That's to be expected. A lot of the people that have been led astray by red herrings and false research are well-meaning people that just got pulled because of their anger that this secret isn't out, that these events are unfolding, that they see tyranny rising, they see their countries changing, and they're sometimes listening to the wrong charlatans to get their conclusions. But what would help this? What would help this problem of the spurious conspiracy theories? The academics and the whistleblowers and the high-level people meeting us halfway and going, okay, there are some, there's definitely an agenda for a world government. That's for damn sure. But, maybe we don't have to put Bigfoot in there. Maybe we don't have to put some of these other things in there, Fine. But then come in and help. That's what I would ask. And if I don't see that assistance, if I don't see that growth in a lot of these big, high-profile celebrity thinkers that everybody loves right now, it then starts to get me asking, and we were just talking about this, Michael and I, on a recent Unslaved episode. We were talking about certain people. I'm going, it makes you wonder, like, are they dumb? Do they just not know? Are they ignorant? Did they not research it? Did they skip over a few chapters when they were reading some of these things? Because they're up on other things. They're talking a lot about that, but they kind of skip over this side of it. Are they afraid of the blowback? Are they trying to protect their careers? Hey, fine, probably a justification there. But then they're going to war with like the feminist movement and the trans thing and the communist movement, who are like threatening to burn them in their cars and kill their families every day. And then they have to move. So these guys aren't seemingly afraid of ruffling feathers, right? So why not just keep ruffling, keep ruffling up the chain, keep going. That's what, and then so you go, well, then are some of these people Pied Pipers? Are some of these people just putting out the stuff that you want to hear to give themselves street cred, and they build themselves up for a couple of years, and then they start giving you the real solutions, which just so happen to work into the exact framework of this secret combine I'm talking about? That's a question always. But I also have another mind with that I don't like accusing everybody of being some kind of shill or agent just without any evidence. So I don't like putting that out there, because people take that and go, oh, they must all be in on it. Like, let's not jump to conclusions, but it's just some valid questions. There's only a few reasons why these high-level academics who have all these followings and write all these books, who are talking about some good issues, why they won't go up to the next level above the glass ceiling and get into the occult side of this. There's only a few reasons why that's going to be happening, folks. So that's why you got to come to podcasts like this. Me and my couple hundred followers and a few other people that might talk about it, and I might be wrong about things too. So you can't just rely on me. That's why I try to just source it and go, here's the sources, go look at what maybe even some of them are wrong. Maybe they're right about some things, wrong about other things. Like, you got to keep that detective mind going at all times. But we've got enough. I hope we can all agree on this. No matter how you see these subjects, I hope we can agree on this. and even those academics listening, if you still are, I don't think they're listening to my show. I honestly don't, but I'm just, hypothetically here, if they were sitting in the room with them, I would say, could we at least agree that there's something far bigger going on than just a few bad apples here and there in the government, and a few bad apples in the media, and a few bad apples over here on the left, and a few bad apples here on the right. And it's just those kids were beaten as children or something wrong with their head. Like there's something a little bigger than that going on. Because I'm going into, I wonder where that chapter was. I might have to find it here, where Bolton gets into this. Yeah, I'm gonna bring this up. This is a good. Sorry, I'm jumping around here, but this jumped into my head. I wanted to show you. Yeah. Okay. So I already did this bit. I'm just finding it in my Kindle book here. I already did this bit in a show on my Truth Warrior Premium. It's one of my favorites. You got to watch it. And it's called The Occult Roots of Communism, or The Cult History of Communism. And I get into fascism as well. It's all the same. It's different flavors of Gatorade. But we get into the occult roots of Marx and that whole thing with France and these Masonic lodges and the guys behind the Marxist thing, the guys behind the Communist Manifesto, why it was so powerful, who funded it, etc. Right? We get into that. And some of that research I got from Kerry Bolton, and he's got some articles on his website, but he goes into even more depth in his book. And so I just want to go through a few things here. Yeah, here it is. So this is in the section of the book called Marxism and the Order of Memphis. Okay, have you heard of the Order of Memphis? You might want to look into that if you're looking for occult connections into these political movements. All right. And this is what I'm telling the academic types. Like, don't just listen to me, some random guy in Canada, like that's into conspiracy research. Like, go look at the data. You want data? You want experts talking about it? You want documentation? Here you go. Marxist Communist League and the Communist Manifesto did not emerge from a void. Communism was the culmination of several centuries of agitation, theorizing, and propaganda from, wait for it, secret societies. Louis Blanqui, so these are the guys, write their names down, okay? Louis Blanqui, a follower of Buonarroti, organized the League of the Just. You heard the League of the Just? Kind of sounds a little bit like the League of Nations. Interesting connection, right? German emigres in Paris formed their own branch called the League of Outlaws, which became the Communist League. And in 1847, asked Marx to write the Communist Manifesto. So he was commissioned to write it. It is from Blanqui that the dictum now credited to Marx, the dictatorship of the proletariat, originated. It came from Masons and secret society members. In 1810, a revived Order of Memphis was established in France, working 90 degrees. It was recognized by the Grand Orient de France in 1826. And by the way, the Grand Orient Lodge, getting into the Templar connection, getting into the history. Hello, intellectuals. That would be a great place to go and dig in. You've got lots of documentation to back you up if you ever came public with this. It was recognized by the Grand Orient de France in 1826 and underwent a further revision in 1838 under Jacques-Étienne Marconi, established lodges in Paris and Brussels and claiming adherents in England. Professor Mark Laus, a labor historian, offers an overview of this association in a paper entitled Walking Like an Egyptian. Laus states of the years following the French Revolution and the rise of revolutionary secret societies, quote, "Since the French Revolution, those eager to build political organization found Freemasonry a ready model." You want me to do it again? Let's do it again. Since the French Revolution, I know a lot of those academic types talk about that and the rise of communism. Those eager to build political organization found Freemasonry a ready model with all the hidden compartments and degrees and the secrecy of it, right? The fact that the masses, the people at the time looked at it as just like another valid religious institution, right? Drinking man's club. Doubtlessly, continues, some revolutionaries had always sought the protective appearance of Freemasonry. An Italian participant in the French Revolution, Felipe Michel Bernardi, survived decades of repression, prison, and intense police scrutiny to launch a series of secret societies that remained viable well into the 1830s. Towards the close of this period, a student named Louis Auguste Blanqui entered this conspiratorial world and remained influential within it as late as the 1870s. And by the way, that is this Professor Mark Laus, who was a labor historian, using the conspiratorial word in there. So we did have already some academics. They're not afraid to talk about it, you know? I wonder why. Towards the close, yeah, we got that. Auguste Blanqui entered this conspiratorial world and remained influential within it as late as the 1870s. Blanqui's Société des Saisons urged an ongoing revolutionary overthrow of ruling classes until the process left the working class alone to exercise power, which is the basis of communism. Some of the German emigres, so this would be Bolton continuing, some of the German emigres in Paris founding the League of Outlaws adopted the doctrines of Blanqui. The League was brought to Germany under the influence of Johann Huckering, who had been a protege of Bernardi. From here, the League of the Just, which became the Communist League, was formed. Now, here we go into the Order of Memphis. Write that one down. Among these secret societies was the Order of Memphis, an important Masonic current in France that included Mizrahism, Martinism, and the Scottish Rite and Grand Orient. The association between the order and the revolutionaries was apparent to the authorities, which considered banning it along with the League of the Just and the Blanquists. In 1839, the authorities decided not to burn the order, or not to ban it, but it was declared dormant in 1841 to avoid a future possibility. The order maintained its existence under its Paris organization, Loge des Philadelphies, which had a relationship that ranged from Republicans to Blanquists, because these guys got their boys on both sides. After the February 1848 Paris riots, the order resurfaced, but was banned and moved its headquarters to London, England. We shall see below that this order was influential in the formation of the First International. When he's talking about the International, the Communist Socialist International, that at a certain time, the current head chief of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Gutierrez, was a president of. So there's a connection there. Also, go look at the symbolism of the Socialist International. It's the Marxist fist holding a rose, Rosicrucians, Marxism, the Blanquists, France. It's all the same bag of oats, guys. So here we go. The Provisional Revolutionary Government mobilized the Parisian workers into cooperative enterprises, the national workshops. Fearing the empowerment of the workers, however, the government shut down the workshop project. Laus states that Louis Blanc, spokesman for the national workshops, was the most prominent member of the Council Supreme d'Ordre Marchand de Memphis, Order of Memphis, which became the major revolutionary faction. Laus writes, quote, "These radical masons rode the crest of radicalism into the June days when the government force of 40,000 moved against an indeterminate number of workers, leaving between 4,000 and 5,000 dead with an unknown number of wounded. The state of siege continued into October, and the dictatorship that emerged banned the Order of Memphis, which moved its Supreme Council to London." So he's just going on. And then Marx's Lodge. So he's a little bit on Marx's Lodge. James, who's he talking about here? I can't find who he's talking about, but he's quoting some guy named James. James draws similar conclusions to that of Laus regarding Freemasonry and the rise of socialism. He says, "It's neither accidental nor an aberration that reformers, Garibaldi, Mazzini," he's talking about Giuseppe Mazzini, Charles Bradbury, and Karl Marx were all Freemasons, as were many labor movement people in Australia. Australia is riddled to the bones with this stuff, guys. James identifies the associations between the First International and the Lodge, of which Marx was an initiate, along with other influential revolutionists. Quote, "What the author, York, in 1871, called the secret history of the First Communist International asserts the IWMA, Industrial Working Men's Association, in Geneva," oh, Geneva, the headquarters of the UN, 1871, "sought and found a temple worthy of their cult. a Masonic temple, which they, Marx and associates, rented. They put the name of temple on their cards and bills. Didn't they call the meditation room in the UN the temple as well? Bradlaugh acknowledges having been initiated into the Lodge de Philadelphia, which is believed to have been Marx's lodge. His brothers, including Blank, Garibaldi, and Mazzini. Founded in London in 1850, its initial members were emigres from recognized foreign orders, which precede Freemasonry as, quote, an institution essentially philanthropical, philosophical, and progressive. It has for its objects the amelioration of mankind without any distinction of class, color, or opinion, either philosophical, political, or religious, for its unchangeable motto, liberty, equality, fraternity. And they also want to obliterate gender and everything else as well. So the First International, we get a whole chapter on this. Guys, like I could sit here all day regaling you with bit after bit after bit to really clinch it. We're not just dealing with some corrupt politics. We are dealing with that, but not just. We're not just dealing with some infiltration by some agents in China into the Canadian government. We're dealing with that, but not just that. We're not just dealing with some WEF members that have public pages and profiles on the website that anybody can access to penetrate the cabinets. We are dealing with that, but not just that. We aren't just dealing with a bunch of radical professors in our universities educating our children in this tantric, communistic, Memphis, Philadelphian, Freemasonic occult doctrine. We are dealing with that, but not just that. We aren't just dealing with some criminal mafias and cabals and orders that deal in human sex trafficking and child trafficking and weapons trafficking and drug trafficking over the borders. We are dealing with that, but not just that. What we are dealing with, my friends, this is my case, is an ancient magical occult tradition that is the foundation of these bad ideas that keep getting rerun like a broken record in country after country to dissolve its progress, to bring it under poverty, to bring it into central control by people that have no allegiance to those countries, and that this operation has been going on for at least a few hundred years. It really started gaining steam in the last 60 to 70 years after the post-war period. The entire war period could also be looked at through the occult lens as a war between occult orders, meaning we can do the whole thing on the New Templars from the Nazis, the Thule Society, the occultists that were infesting that regime, as the occultists that were infesting the Soviet Union and the Stalinist regime, as were the occultists that were infesting even in Africa under Idi Amin with their sorcerers and witchcraft going on behind the political veil there with those dictators and those butcheries. We've got the history of the occult connections in America with the America's secret establishment, the Order of Skull and Bones, of which many presidents were members of. We've got the history of the connections with Quebec and France and Canada and the entrance of the Fabian network into Canadian politics as early as the 70s. We've got Pierre Elliott Trudeau's cozy relationship with Mao Zedong and the communists over there in China, and the fact that you have these Westerners coming in, these Western Masons coming in, these Shriners, that goes to the Eastern cults, which is why they got scimitar symbolism and Eastern symbolism, even though it's supposed to be a Western secret order. You got all these connections going on. We've got Red Crosses. We've got medical. We get the cult of the medics, the pharma, the occult symbolism there. It doesn't end. The moment it begins, it just never ends. We're dealing with a dark occult agenda. I've always theorized that we're not just dealing with dark occultists either. Here's the good news. Let me leave you with some good news. I believe, I have reasons for believing this. I don't have smoking guns, but I've got some reasons and some intuitive things that I've just noticed by researching a lot of this material for a long time. Even going into the ancient mythological tradition and finding that and just understanding the fact that if we see humans, we see the potential for both good and evil, right? So if there's good humans and bad humans walking around right now in the general public, well, then it stands to reason that there's some good guys and bad guys kind of battling it out in the world of politics, in the world of business, in the world of banking, in the world of the military, and even in the UN, and even in the world, even in these big charities and these NGOs that are all being investigated right now. There's good people fighting back, because we wouldn't have even gotten the exposure to this had there not been good men and women writing these books, doing this research, even people coming from within these lodges to expose it, coming from within these organizations to expose it. This whole archive playlists of people coming out of the World Health Organization exposing that, out of the UN exposing that, etc. Right? So this isn't a huge leap for anybody to understand there's an occult layer to all this. And when you understand that, if we can understand that, then the solution becomes clear that, well, what they've done to achieve this mass formation in the public, to have us help them build their New World Order project, is they have weaponized our traditions that came from our ancestors. They've weaponized our Akashic records. They've weaponized and gone into the ancient mysteries and pulled out their favorites and warped it and sold it back to us by forms of toxic cults and toxic religion and toxic political ideologies. So, and even the symbols, the symbolic archive, or all the good things in religion, right? Where does that come from? That comes from our past. That's our ancestry. Those are the sum total of human knowledge. That the Raiders of the Lost Ark, that's these people, these blankists, these revolutionaries, Raiders of the Lost Ark, little man syndrome, right? They stole your birthright. They stole the wisdom of lost ages, and they warped it and sold it back to you in a toxic form and shoved it down your throats. And that's what they're trying to sell you. And that's why it works. That's why you're attracted to it. That's why you bite down on every pill they give you. That's why you're so many people are the NPC, willing to just take out one brain chip and put in a new one. Oh, now I'm doing this because I was told and commanded to by my masters. So then the equation is, well, if they're able to do that and weaponize these ancient traditions and religious and philosophical and political ideas in the way that they have done for the purposes of seizing the thrones of power in the world, to centralize power and control, to control all the land, wealth, and resources, and knowing full well that if you want to control all the land, wealth, and resources, you got to control the minds of the public that live on that land, that create that wealth and those resources, right? Then if they can weaponize that knowledge against us, why can't we take that knowledge back and use it to fight them back? Because they're just giving you the straw man version. They're giving you the fake version. They're giving you the twisted version. I go with the old Tolkien quote or C.S. Lewis, whoever it was, that said that evil people, evil psychopathic minds cannot create. They can't create. That's the mark of a psychopath. You know why they can't create? Because the psychopath, that person that is in that state of arrested development psychologically, they don't have the capacity for empathy. That's why theirs is all about the fake compassion of the Buddhists, of the corrupt ones, not just these corrupt guys that sell it, blind you by the light, the fake ones, right? They don't have the real empathy, the real connection within to the kingdom of heaven and the natural world, where the symbolic archive and the spirit really lives, right? They don't have access to that. So what do? They steal the works of good and then they sell it back to you with their own slant on it, which just so happens to be psychopathic and non-empathic. And they know you're going to bite down on it because they know the human consciousness is naturally oriented towards the morphinogenic field. The Akashic field, whatever you want to call it. It's oriented towards progress. It's oriented towards being, there is a part of you that wants to be in peace and unity and harmony with your fellow man and with nature, right? So all they got to do is put that wolf's clothing on or sheep's clothing on, and you'll buy it Not because the thing is evil, but because they know it calls upon a deeper reservoir of memory in you. And that's why the cults work. That's why people are willing to drink the Kool-Aid and give the Kool-Aid to their kids. That's why people are willing to clap and cheer when struggle sessions are happening and people are being burned alive on stage while everybody's cheering because they dared go against the cult doctrine of the political tyrant. That's why people are willing to clap and cheer while people are being pulled out of their homes and put into trains to send them to the gulags or the concentration camps for mass murder and starvation. That's why people are able to clap and cheer for evil that's, unimaginable to the person that doesn't believe it exists. It's why people are able to believe lies. Because behind the lie is the pull towards your virtue. And then you believe you're virtuous, you're doing the right thing, and then you're going to hide your inner resentment, your greed, your inner power struggle, your self-hate, your hatred of wisdom and knowledge, right? Your misosophy. You're going to hide all that that's there, and you're going to put the mask of virtue on. And you're going to walk around. I'm the virtuous one. Look how virtuous I am. I'm doing all the latest things. I'm wearing all the colors. I'm wearing all the flags and the decorations and the costumes. And I'm saying all the things. And I'm voting where I'm told to vote. And I'm getting all my marching orders from the right approved authorities. I'm virtuous. And because they know you want to be virtuous, that's why you're playing that part. But are you? Well, the true occult tradition, the true spiritual tradition is there to help you defrag all of this and figure that out and deal with the dragon within your own cave before you go out trying to fix the world. Those are the real teachers. Like Michael was saying, the real teachers that will inspire you and spark your curiosity and uplift you and tell you, you can learn about these things that you want to learn about. You don't need some expert over your head all the time. You should look at experts. You should hear what they're saying. And yeah, for sure. But don't be afraid to explore and spot the evil externally by identifying the evil internally. These are the teachers, right? So that's the good news. It's not all bad. It's not all evil. That's the one balancing point. And not everybody in all these places are all doing evil things. There are many unwilling or unwitting participants as well in this greater project. That is evil. And it seeks to eradicate human freedom, and it seeks to eradicate humanity, because that's what they're openly talking about, isn't it? They want less humans. They want the humans that are left to be highly controlled and regulated by a central authority, right? They're going to keep those files on you, just like in that Shambhala temple and in the KGB. And so, yeah, it's profoundly evil. These people that at the top talking about all this virtue and meditation rooms and prayer circles, yeah, their eyes are closed to the crimes happening to children all over the world right now. So, what else do you need to know? I've got testimony from people who've been a part of these trafficking rings that told me that, yeah, it's members of these Shriners and these Knights of Columbus and these Masonic temples and these churches that are a part of this insidious evil. So, unfortunately, when you're fighting evil, you're fighting with both hands tied behind your back. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't fight, and that doesn't mean we can't win. And I guess because maybe we can't just win this greater war all by ourselves, you got to start winning that war inside of you. And the best way to do that is to clear up your thinking, sharpen your discernment, sharpen your reason, sharpen the calling from the inner voice, the intuitive inner kingdom, right? That's always prompting you. And stay curious, stay open, stay committed, keep going, fight back where you can, raise your children with all those great virtues, the real ones, not the fake ones. Learn how to be authentic, find the authentic types. If you can be authentic, you'll find the real McCoys. You'll be attracted to the authentic people that are really doing the good work out there. And once again, just that message to those academics that thank God for you doing the work you're doing, fighting the battles you're fighting. But I just want you to know you're fighting little skirmishes over here. Come join the greater war. There's an occult war happening all around us right now. And it would be helpful to have more that have that level of influence that can actually get the real specific facts out about this so that we can finally untangle it. Because you're not going to untangle it by just constantly battling these surface level public square issues. You got to get to the root of it. And the root is deep, dark, and vast. And it is being exposed before us, whether we like it or not. It's almost as if it's being exposed without any assistance from humanity. It's phenomenal times we live in. So there's no reason to look at this information, my friends, and get all doom and gloom and black pilled on me. Suicidal. Oh, there's hopeless. No. To know evil, you have to watch it. You have to experience it. You have to see it. And in order to defeat evil, you have to have knowledge of it. And so we're getting that knowledge. And it's fallen on its own sword right now. We should almost just get out of its way and just keep blasting out the truth to combat the lies. And that's what this is all about. So truth is going to win in the end. You got to believe that, but get yourself on the track of trying to get as close to that truth as you can in all these areas. Study the great minds, find the authentic people, the authentic voices, and get digging. And I think we're going to, and we've already been doing it. There's already a lot of great people that are doing this. I'd just like to see a little bit more. And I'll wrap up with just saying a big thank you to everybody supporting this research as long as you have, supporting Unslaved, supporting Truth Warrior, supporting those ones out there that are doing good work. Keep doing that. It's imperative. And see what you can do in your own right. If you don't like something someone's doing, go do it better, right? It's a team effort here. So we live in great times. We're going to get more things revealed. I see it happening. It's going to be chaotic for a little bit, especially here in Canada. But strap yourselves in, guys. The reason it's getting so chaotic is because I think this evil is getting flushed right out. And there's higher forces at work, I believe, that are assisting with that. So stay positive, and truth is going to win the end. So thanks, everybody. We'll tune in again soon. Have a good one. Cheers.